Okay, so this is where we left off last time. We were building our terrain and we were raising and lowering and things like that. We added our first person controller and made all sorts of neat things using different types of textures and stuff like that. So um, let's see, I'm going to undo what I was just doing as I was talking. Smooth this stuff out. So I'm holding shift and moving this stuff down so that we can get a nice flat thing here. So one thing that's really cool about Unity is there's this thing called the asset store, and that's where you can go grab all sorts of different assets. So if you're not that great of an artist, you can go grab different models and things like that to put in your game. And there's also code samples in there too. So if you're not good at coding, you can go grab some code and put it in there. And then there's also starter kits where if there's a game idea that you have, if you want to do like a match 3 type game or um, an FPS or something like that, and you want to start with a template, you can go get those out of there. Some of the stuff is pay, and some of the stuff is free. But you can get all sorts of great things in there to help you out. Where either you don't have enough time to do everything yourself, or you just don't know how to do it. You can go find stuff in there. So what I want to show you today is real quick, I think, how to go to the asset store and find some assets that you want to bring in and import them into your scene. So we're going to go to Window and go to Asset Store. And it may ask you to create an account. You don't have to provide, at least now, you don't have to provide any kind of credit card, anything like that. You got to give an email, though. They don't spam you with anything, so feel free to use a real email. Again, this thing is modular, so we could dock it wherever we want. I'm just going to let it float here because when we're done with it, I'm just going to close out of it. But anyway, so let's just say we can go to 3D models and see what we can find. Um, there are, stuff that's free, stuff that you got to pay for. But if you're on the kind of budget that I'm on, I always sort by price because it gives you the free stuff first. And then you can look at any of these things and you can bring it into your project. So let's see, which one of these things do we want to bring in? We can bring in, what is this? And you can click on them, and this thing has got a bunch of trees, 4 types of grass, 2 types of rocks. You can bring that in. Or let's see, is there anything? Block city. This looks kind of interesting. Set of 5 block houses. And some of these have web player demos that you can watch through. It'll open a web browser and you can navigate them and see what they look like. This one's free though, so we'll just go ahead and download it and see what happens. Different things are different sizes, so you just gotta, sometimes you might have to wait a little bit longer. But it says down here his size is about 300 megs, so shouldn't take that long to download, and we'll import it just like we imported the rest of our assets in the first one. So it's going to come up here pretty soon, I think, and now that it's finished, and it'll ask us if we want to import this or what we want to do with it. We'll give it a second here to finish thinking or do whatever it's going to do. I'm not sure. Sometimes you get stuck with a rainbow wheel. Here we go, decompressing. That's a good sign. So it's going to decompress this package. Here it says, which of the stuff do we want? We'll just take it all, and it should bring it into our project. And once this is done, I'll close out of this asset store window because we don't need to have it open all the time. And then in here, we should have something about buildings. Here we go, block building pack. And now we've got all these different buildings that we can stick into our scene. And I can just drag it in here. And if we run, let's see what happens. There's our building off in the distance. I can run over to it. And depending on how complicated these models are, some of them, maybe you can walk around inside of them, or other ones are just, you get the outside of it. So here we go. Let's see what happens. Yeah, so this one doesn't even have any colliders on it. You can just walk right through it. But different types of buildings will have different things. So yeah, so we can import a whole bunch of different buildings, make whatever kind of scene we want. Let's see. All right, so here's one thing that I'm going to do. We'll try this. Who knows what will happen? Stuff in the asset store, most of it's pretty good. Sometimes you'll find stuff that isn't that great, but This one looks like it's in pretty good shape. So I'm going to try something here on the fly. I haven't tried this before with this particular model, so we'll see what happens. But so we have these models down here in our assets. These are things we can drag into our scene. And then up here in our hierarchy, these are objects that are actually already in the scene. These are things that we can drag in. You can drag in as many of these as you want. You can have a whole bunch of different copies of them. But for this guy, I'm going to come over here in his inspector. We have something here called generate colliders. So I'm going to hit the checkbox on that, and then do I have to apply that somehow? Apply. And now I think what should happen, let's drag another one of these things in here. Now I think that we shouldn't be able to walk right through it anymore. Yep, so now we're stuck. And the cool thing is, since this thing was what's considered a prefab, it should have applied it to this one we had in there before, and it did. And so by changing it in one spot, it basically made it the effect for every single instance of these buildings. Now we can't get through it. And like I said, depending on what you get, some of them are going to have interiors. Some of them may have animations associated with it. It just depends on what the author or the artist of the asset did. So yeah, so that's that. We can do other things like, now that we have this instance of it, we can scale it. So right now it's a scale of 10. What if we wanted to make it really tall and skinny? I'm just clicking on the X over here on the scale and doing this sort of stuff, or we can make it really wide. We can even click on this. We can sink it into the ground a little bit, maybe. Maybe you just want, this is the look you're going for. You want to have it sticking out of a mountain top or something like that. So we can come over here and see what we got. And there it is down there. So now, with this one model, we've really made two different looking buildings. Although this one doesn't have a door, but that's right. But yeah, so that's how you can, stretch the value of your assets, is by just kind of tweaking them a little bit inside of Unity. You can make them look completely different than what you started with, and get a lot of mileage out of them. Instead of having, every single building look identical, by stretching them or shrinking them or sticking pieces in the ground, making them taller, all that sort of stuff will make it look like you've got a bunch of unique buildings in there. So, yeah, I think that's really all that I wanted to show for this one. So yeah, basically you just go into the asset store and start bringing pieces in and assembling an environment that you can walk around in and make it look however it is you want to look at. And you can spend all kinds of time working on this sort of stuff, make it look really neat, digging through that asset store, trying to find exactly what it is that you need. So let's see. Oh, here's something. So down here at the bottom, it's complaining. Oh, we have 2 audio listeners in the scene. Really bad things are going to happen. And what that says, and why that's a problem, is we only have one set of speakers on our computer, and so as we're walking through the scene, and the game engine is trying to figure out how to reproduce all the sounds from this environment, have it come out of 2 speakers. And essentially, we have 2 listeners, means that we've got 4 ears in our scene, and nobody knows how to do that because people don't have 4 ears. And maybe if we had 4 speakers, we could find some way to make that work, but we don't, and so it's complaining. And the reason is that we have an audio listener on our main camera here, and in our FPS controller, we also have an audio listener. So when we started this project, we had an empty scene with just a main camera that saw this sort of stuff over here. And then we dragged in a prefab for our FPS controller, which also has a main camera that sees this stuff. And this is the camera that we want to use because we don't care about this one. We're only using the camera from the perspective of our first-person controller. If we wanted to have multiple cameras in here, which you can do, we could disable this audio listener, and now that should get rid of all of our complaints. And again, I just unchecked the box with this main camera selected, but we really don't even need this camera in our scene, so I'm just going to delete it because we only have one camera too. And now, if you notice, we hear footsteps now. Before I was getting all confused about, what do I do? I have 2 audio listeners. I don't know which one to use. Now that we've straightened that out, everything's happy. I wonder if I can. I was going to try to jump into this. I think I'm too tall, so I can't get into this balcony. Anyways, so yeah, so that was one way to get rid of that error, and you'll see errors popping up down here in the bottom, and depending on what they are, you'll take different actions to fix them. Let's see what else. File saving. I think I forgot to mention the other time. Save your scene. It's going to ask you what to save it in. I'll just call it untitled. Who cares? And that's going to be inside of our assets folder of this particular project. So here's our untitled scene. And then we can save our entire project if we want to. And so generally, what I do is I save the project, save the scene, and then we're good to go. Sometimes people get confused about where their Unity project is actually being saved. And so if you right-click on any one of your assets, and you can say Reveal in Finder. I think in Windows it says Show in Explorer, something like that. Open it up, and then you'll see this is where your project is. Unity Assets, 3D World. Here's my directory. So if I wanted to copy this whole project to like a flash drive or to a network drive or something like that, you want to go one directory above assets. So I would copy this entire 3D World folder somewhere else, or if I want to check in version control or whatever you want to do, this is the thing that you want. And make sure you're copying that after you exit Unity, because sometimes there's files that are in use and it doesn't copy them, and I don't know, things might get kind of messed up. So just exit out of Unity completely, grab this folder and copy it wherever you want to go, or zip it up, or however you want to do it. But this is how you figure out where you're at. It's just grab any one of your files in here, say Reveal in Finder or Show in Explorer, and then you'll be good to go. So I think that's really all that I wanted to show you for this one. So the important parts are going to the asset store, finding the stuff that you want, bringing them in, scaling them, placing them differently, generating your colliders, being able to make your scene look unique with a small number of assets is important. And so yeah, I think that sort of sums up what we're working on, and we'll